it has this feedback that I have to turn off really quickly.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
this is an opportunity of a lifetime to talk with Dr. Eva Allen, the one and only wonderful art explorer and teacher, and also ski friend and excellent
Gotta do that again and
friend
again.
for life. Yes. But I've really admired you, Eva, over the years because you have just like a wonderful scholar's mind and a curiosity for art that inspires me. So thank you for joining us for Mystery Object. This is the
Excited to see what you have to show me.
Yes, we're doing it. Okay, so the point of Mystery Object is for all of you out there who are maybe thinking about going to a museum and wondering how to access tools to make your visit more meaningful. So we are going to challenge each other to some unusual art objects that we found that have been kind of withheld from view. And I don't think either of us are super familiar with what the other one has to share. So Eva's going to kind of go through some thinking strategies and maybe help us along the way know how you approach unfamiliar art, and then I'll do the same. But actually, we're going to flip that. I'm going first.
Okay.
So here we go. Here is Eva's object that she's sharing with me. And something tells me that this is contemporary art. Yes.
Yes.
Because its medium is weird and not traditional canvas or print. Yeah.
Yes.
So when we go to the contemporary art galleries, there's a level of stress and blood pressure rising that I see among my comrades, my fellow museum followers, but we have to just be patient with it, right?
And you are not alone, because contemporary art is so new that there's not a lot of stuff written about it. Not a lot of your opinion is just as valuable as an expert. And I'm not a contemporary art expert, but I walked into the Yale University Art Gallery, which I was visiting. And I walked into the room and this blew me away. When you're in a gallery, you can have a better sense of what the scale of an object is. And usually that's in relation to the human body. I'm just over 5 feet tall, and this is, it was twice my size. So that was a big impact. Yes. This is a big object. And I wish you can't tell that from this image, which is on their website.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's helpful to know the scale. Okay. So this is huge. And like, as far as width goes, how
yeah,
wide?
I would say a good 3 feet wide.
Okay.
So
it kind of has some proportionality to the figure, to like human scale or proportion, but it's like a giant.
It's interesting that you say figure, because it has some things in common with the human form.
Yeah.
Such as, you want to?
It's vertical.
Vertical.
And it has things coming out of it. Like we have limbs, and it kind of has some, I don't know. Maybe that's too much of a stretch. Is that, so I'm trying to like decipher, is that wood or is that leather?
Good question. Yeah, bronze above, and then silk and wool. Probably other fabrics in there too. And I have to say, this image in real life, which is always great to see art in real life, because even in this very high quality photograph, the bronze is more red than, and so even though they're not the same color, the red of the textile of the silk and wool is very rich and cherry. And less orange than maybe is on your screen, depending on what your screen is looking like. And then the bronze has this red patina. I don't know if I think it was applied. But when you see it it's these two reds that are, if they were musical notes, they would be like a half step apart. So there's a lot of tension. You look at these like two reds and they're kind of go together, but they clash. There's some dissonance there. It was really cool.
That is interesting. And the materials, the contrast of the textures of the materials is really interesting because it's so smooth. I almost thought it was like leather, or, I mean, it seemed figural, almost like skin. I don't know. And the bronze.
Yeah.
But that silk is so different and flowy and yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. And
it went like this with your hand because it's like, yes, there's some sort of tactile quality about both, but very different. You can imagine how it would feel so different under the fingertips.
Right. But then to me, it kind of reminds me of, like, when I look at it, there's some red kind of woven into the bronze.
Yes.
Those little strands, it almost looks like something's flowing, like being pulled through with gravity. I don't know, like a water.
That's so cool. Yes, like a waterfall, like the way it's pooling at the bottom.
Yeah.
Trickling over rocks.
Right.
I mean, one of the fun things about art history and one of the tools of art history is comparing and contrasting with things that we're familiar with. So that endows it with more and more meaning. So even though you come into a art gallery, contemporary, any type, you don't know much about it, you can still draw on your personal observations and experience, and that enriches it for you. The longer you look, the more you see, the more comparisons, and this is both comparison and good contrast within the same art object.
Yes. And if you just allow yourself and give yourself permission to say, well, I don't know anything about this, but I do know about this that seems kind of similar. That really helps me to make it relevant in some way. So if I'm looking at this, there is this kind of descending red, and if I'm thinking about color now, so I don't know exactly what the brown or the red on the bronze is like, but this is a pretty aggressive red in the silk.
Yeah.
And it's knotted. And I mean, to me, when I see like little strands of rope like that, it kind of reminds me of like veins or blood, or I don't know. But I don't know. But when I see red, it just seems like this is not trying to be hidden or subtle. This is a very aggressive, confrontational type of color, right?
Yes. But the softness of the fabric counteracts anything. It has a presence and a stability and a sort of permanence because of the uprightness and the frontality, and it's part of a series called the Malcolm X series that the artist was making a few years after Malcolm X's assassination. And she made multiple of these objects combining bronze and textile fabric, wool and silk. So there is a sense, once you read the label, you say, oh, there's a memorial quality to it, a stele or stelet, or she calls them stels, where
kind of like those funerary markers from antiquity, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They are usually stone, though.
Right.
Yeah. So there's this permanent quality, but then the fact that wool and silk could biodegrade over time. I don't know. I thought that was cool.
So so the context is kind of what I like to think about after I've done this visual breakdown. And so Malcolm X was he was killed, right?
Yes.
Shot. And and I'm trying to connect the little history I know about him. He was a iconic figure in the civil rights movement in the 1960s, right? And had a little different type of approach than Martin Luther King Jr., but definitely one who was looked to as a leader in that entire historic moment. And so I'm trying to think like, okay, so we have this funerary marker.
Or the idea of memorializing.
The idea of
Being
memorial.
so moved that you have to do something about it. On the other hand, there's I heard the artist say that she named them after she started creating the work. So she created this and then was like, I inspired in memorial, wanted to memorialize Malcolm X. So she was working on this contrast between bronze and fabric. And she also wanted it to be not like a human form. She wanted it to be like a stele.
Sure.
So that's what gave her the idea to cover the base of the bronze. So originally they were just bronze creations made out of wax, and then cast in bronze using the lost wax process.
Okay.
And then, but she didn't want to see the supports underneath.
Oh.
So that's what gave her the idea to cover it with these ropes and bundles of wool and silk. So, and then that, she says, becomes a sculptural element itself. So they're
correct. I can see that.
Yes, two sculptures coming together.
I mean, I don't know why I said correct. It just rang really true to me in the moment. But I can see how, I mean, my brain automatically wants a one-to-one transaction, like this means this, and like the Northern Renaissance iconography, but I feel like this is a little bit different. It doesn't lend itself to being really translated into this clear-cut meaning. But that contrast of surfaces and materials.
And it's so high and striking and pouring over a average sized human figure that it had a magnetic pull, even though I knew nothing about the context before approaching this artwork.
And I think we humans like the concrete, the hard, the enduring, and we like the soft. And I feel like, anyway.
And potentially ephemeral. Yes, I think the tension between the permanent and the ephemeral gives our life a lot of richness and meaning.
Right. That feels like honest about maybe the contradictions that happened in when we think of Malcolm X, and the contradictions that are always there in every kind of historic moment that involves humans. So I love this object, and I'm so glad that you introduced it to me.
Oh, I'm glad that I stumbled upon it, and learning more about the artist, who is an amazing creator and writer and poet as well. And she's still alive, and she wrote a historical novel about Sally Hemings, which cracked open the whole scholarly debate about Thomas Jefferson, and she made those historical figures into characters in a novel. So at a time when it wasn't accepted by all historians that Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson had a long relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
Problematic as that was. So she had she was a force within American history as well, this artist.
Right. Have you seen anything else by her? Are they similar?
I've seen another stele just today because I was like, oh, I'm going to stop by my local art museum because everybody
Oh.
should stop by their local art museums
Yes, always.
with the membership, or as today was free first Thursday. Every museum has these, so if you don't want to, so it can be open to anybody. And the one that I saw today was along similar lines, but it was black bronze and black wool and silk, and it looked kind of Darth Vader-y. I don't know. I think
intimidating.
I think this one was. I like this red one better, but the other one was much earlier. So I think she worked out a few things that make it more striking and,
Sure.
in my mind, successful, especially that tangy tension between the two reds.
Yes.
Really striking.
I love that. Yes. Oh, I'll have to, is this on in the permanent collection at Yale, or
It is. It's a recent acquisition.
okay.
So it wouldn't have been there when you were in New Haven.
Right. Okay. A note to all of us. This is something to see if we're ever in New Haven. Wonderful. Okay, Eva, are you ready?
I don't know. I'm excited.
All right, here's the big reveal.
Ooh, I see that it looks like a Japanese print.
Yes.
Woodcut. I don't read any Japanese though, but I love the way that the inscription on the red is like in a Japanese lantern shape or something, and maybe that's a poem above because of or maybe it's a long description. And then the signature is down below, which I love the way that the signature and the stamp solidify the picture plane so that it's going to be on top and then the figures are in the back. So let's see, we've got a guy who looks like a top hat in the middle distance, wearing a top hat. And then these 5 characters, and they look like they're having a pretty good time listening to this seated figure on my left read them a story or something. And the boats in the background, it makes me look like they're fishermen who are stopped to have a break and hear a funny, I don't know, pirate's tale or a whale of a tale, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
But the guy in the back seems like he's dressed in Western slacks and a top hat. So could this be after the 1850s and 60s when Japan opened to the West, kind of forced to open?
Yep.
And they all have these characters written on their clothing, armbands and on the back. And the one, is that a 3? So it's like numbers on the back written.
24601 or whatever.
I don't know what that means.
Jean Valjean.
Oh, is that a hint? Are they
yes. Or 246. Oh, I can't remember exactly what Jean Valjean was, but yes. They're prisoners.
Prisoners. So they're marked with their numbers.
But I don't want to take away your visual breakdown is so good. Do you have anything else you're noticing before I give away all the secrets?
Oh, well, I love that the way the clouds are coming from the distance to the front and they overlap. There's that special moment in Japanese prints where in the printing process, you can make some of the colors more saturated and that's in the colorist, not in the printmaker drawing decision. Well, I mean, sometimes they can write it out. Like, I would like the sky, and in this case, also the sea, to fade the way the colors nicely fade from a more intense blue at the front to a less intense blue,
Right.
different in the sky, and those wonderful, almost like dragon-like clouds above.
They're so cool. How it kind of just defies
Mhm.
perspective, and I don't know, like there's no
Mhm.
the illusionism is just so different. Like we're reminded over and over that this is
Mhm.
pretty flat. This is not real life, but
Yeah, that's a different type of creation of space rather than the one point perspective. Instead, it's about, bigger figures in the front. And, that bench doesn't conform to a Western style Renaissance perspective, but is rather just angled backwards away from the picture plane. And then the boats get smaller and smaller and back.
and look at this angle. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, that's really striking. It seems like it's even closer to the five figures than it would be if it were a photograph, for example.
Yeah. Oh, excellent job. Do you want more
Yes,
context?
give me more, because as we saw with the
Oh.
Malcolm X series, your first impressions have a lot of rich meaning already, and then the more you
Right.
learn, the more value it adds. So
Right.
it really doesn't take away.
Not at all. And in
Sometimes
fact,
it does, but usually it just adds richness and richness and richness.
right. And you're invested after you give it a minute to pique your curiosity. So this is it's called a Shinbun Nashike, which is in the 19th century. They had, I'm not an expert in Japanese art history, but I do know that they had a kind of periodical, like a newspaper with mostly text.
Mm-hmm.
And that was reserved for the upper class that was literate. And for
Mhm.
my reading today, 60% of the population was illiterate. And so this is a tabloid, a type of very disposable print series that was mostly image with a little bit of text. And it was kind of the more scandal, lascivious stories, just any kind of dirt they could find of any sort of.
So this is like a story within a story. So they've got the story, and then the guy is reading to his
Yes.
comrades from a similar.
Right.
Story.
Right. So maybe he's sharing
Yes.
the periodical. Maybe he's talking about some kind of mystery murder that happened that was in a very common place. But I want to get the name of this exactly right. The name of this print, sorry, let me just grab it here, is called Toyokichi Educating Himself and Fellow Prisoners.
Uh-huh.
And so from what I understand, it was the samurai who conducted a lot of the education among the elite society. And it was once Western ideas began kind of coming into Japan, this idea of public education started to become more known, and the political leaders began thinking about implementing that on a larger scale. So I think there was some interest in literacy. And I don't know how this story, I've scoured the web to see how this story was alongside a story about a dog fight and another story about a murdered prostitute. Like, I don't know where this prisoner education program falls in this tabloid, but here it is. But I love this care in the actual image making to show different personalities
completely.
of the prisoners.
They're all so different,
Right.
but not to the point of caricature, really. I mean,
Right.
there's
Right.
their whole expressions are just an economy of line. And that
Yes.
conveys that they're all these different guys with their
These
different
guys.
thoughts,
Right. I mean, it feels like the artist
humanity.
might have known them.
Yeah, or at least as an observer of character.
Right. Done so in something that was meant to be completely disposable.
True,
I
but
don't,
there's the old stories, which I'm not totally sure if they hold up, but the stories of late 19th century objects from Japan being packed with with prints by
right.
really great multi-wood block prints, just uses packing peanuts, basically.
Right. Exactly. And interestingly, when I looked at what museums have this object, the Getty in LA, Philadelphia, MFA, there are several in Europe and in Japan that have this very print reproduced. So,
Because that's the cool thing about prints. They exist in exactly repeatable uh, images and exist
right.
all over the world. So,
Yeah. Oh, this is so cool to have the print specialist here with me.
well,
But
the reasons I chose to study prints is they're accessible. You don't necessarily have to travel and see them in if you
right.
are tied to your home and family. You can also your more local museum might have the same impression as the one that's, say, in Paris or whatever.
Right. I love that too. And I
Mhm.
love the implication of prints, how, you know, a, a oil on canvas or even this steel, it has one home. And
Mhm.
it was made for a museum now, but one patron in the past. And here, this is a spreader of ideas because so many people have access to it. So,
Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating because you can imagine somebody not necessarily wanting to be on board in 19th century Japan, educating of prisoners.
right.
The bias exists today. There's Yale just hosted their first graduation of incarcerated prisoners. I was happy
Oh,
to see. One of my
wow.
colleagues, Zelda Roland, is involved in the prisoner education at the base in New Haven. So,
Oh, that's
so
great.
cool. And if I had my druthers, then prisons would be major places of education too. So this is really fantastic to see
Yeah,
it happening in Japan in the
right.
60s and 70s.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And the thing I love about art objects that I'm not familiar with is when I take the time to look at them and maybe learn a few things about what was happening historically, I'm always left with many more questions than I have answers for.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that spark of curiosity is what makes me feel alive in the museum and keeps me coming back and keeps me questioning the world I see around me, even when I'm not in the museum. So,
Yeah. Well, we're looking at we're maybe we can put ourselves in the position of the person with the top hat, looking into the future, not dressed in Japanese attire, but in Western attire that would
right,
prove to be the future for 100
right,
years. And off he looks towering above the horizon, like a German romantic figure.
right, exactly, exactly. And he's portrayed in the eyes of the woodblock cutter, who I'm assuming is Japanese.
Yeah, I think
So,
you're totally right. And then there's that same economy of line. So
mhm,
just a few strokes can tell us he's wearing long slacks and top
yeah,
hat, is holding his hands behind his His, he's got his hands behind his back, like he's grasping his wrists or something.
Sure.
It's a very human, contemplative gesture,
Right.
universality. We can see these folks' humanity, and I really love this laughing guy.
Right here.
Yeah.
I know. He's very lovable.
He can't get enough. He's like, oh, I want to know the end of the story. Can you?
Right. What's next?
What a thigh slapper. I can't believe this story.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is delightful. Thank you so much for sharing your object and giving us so much with I knew giving you a print, even if it was from Japan, would be something fun to listen to because you're so knowledgeable, but thanks for sharing.
It's always a pleasure.
All right.
It's so fun.
Yes.
Let's do it in the museum together sometime.
Let's do. I think we need to have a San Francisco museum blitz for sure.
A lot of great things happening in San Francisco museums now and forever.
Yes. Okay. I'll take you up on that, Eva.
Okay. But we could do this in the meantime if we need.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. All right. Good night. Thank you.